Hey guys, it's Miss Froehling, and we're going to go through our word problem solving plan. Ooh, if I could talk, that we have been learning in our class in third grade math. So let's look at the problem that we have first of all. Principal West records the time each third grade class spends on the internet. Miss Jones' class spends 57 minutes. Miss Smith's class spends 31 minutes, and Miss Rosser's class spends 45 minutes. Combined, about how much more time do Miss Rosser's and Miss Smith's classes spend on the internet than Miss Jones' class spends on the internet? A lot of information. And if you're like me or like my kids, you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's just too much stuff. So I've got to figure out how to organize it first. And one of the strategies we use before we even get to that point is we're going to make sure we finger read that sentence. When I read it out loud, that's another way of finger reading because I made sure I hit every word and I understood it. Another thing that I teach my kids is finger reading is putting your finger one finger at a time or one word at a time. And you can already tell I have some spelling problems in those because I wrote Miss Jones class instead of Miss Jones class. So anyway, so now I've got to use some of my other strategies to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to go back, and when I read it, I'm going to make sure I underline some of the important pieces of information, like I know that I have to have Miss Jones 57 minutes. That's important. And Miss Smith's 31 minutes. And Miss Rosser's 45 minutes. And I also need to know that there's some instruction there. It's telling me I have to combine and also that I have to round, because when I see combined, it means I add, and when I see about, it means I round. But then I also see how much more time, and that's telling me I've got to do some comparing. Then I also need to know who I'm comparing. Miss Rossers and Miss Smith compared to Miss Jones. So, okay, I think I have my information together, but it would really help me if I had something to show that. So here's what we do. We are going to start with a basic 4-quadrant, plan. So when you do it one-handed. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze, and that's A for analyze. So I'm going to take my numbers and my labels and figure out what I have. Well, I know that Miss Jones, they spend 57 minutes. Okay, and Miss Smith's class, they spend 31 minutes. In Miss Rosser's class, they spend 45 minutes. Okay, so I've got my labels, and now I need to think about what was my question again? What is it I'm trying to do in this whole mess of words? Because there's a lot of stuff there. Oh yeah, I'm trying to find out how much more time is Miss Rosser's and Miss Smith's than Miss Jones. Okay, so I kind of shorthanded that because I don't want to get trapped in the writing down every little teeny tiny thing, because one, that's a huge time waster, and two, I kind of need to be thinking through this and using my thinking skills. So now I'm ready to think about my plan, what exactly I'm going to do to make this happen. And always in the first part of my plan, I'm always going to see whether or not I have to round. So did I have to round in this question? Yeah, I did. Remember, we circled about. So I know that I have to change those numbers into rounded numbers. So Miss Jones is going to change into 60 because 57 is going to round up to 60. Why aren't I rounding to hundreds? Well, I don't have any numbers in the hundreds place. So this is a pretty good bet that even though the instructions don't tell me, I'm going to go to rounding to the tens place, because in third grade in Texas we have to round to the tens and to the hundreds. So 31 is going to round to 30, and 45 is going to round to 50, because we always know 5 or more we round up. Now I got to get rid of these old numbers, because if I use them again, it's going to mess me up. I don't want to have them anymore. So now that I have my rounding done, I'm ready to make some steps in my plan. So I'm making 2 squares because we usually have multi-step problems, and that's where we get tricked. So the first part, I look back at my question, and I know that I have to do some combining. I have to do Miss Rosser's and Miss Smith's class together. So, okay, sorry about that. Had a little camera blip, but so I know that in my first step, I have to add Miss Rosser's and Miss Smith's, and then after that, I have to do the combining part. I have to compare this new answer, which I'm going to call my RS, and compare them to Miss Jones. So, I wonder who... Okay, so, I have to decide what I'm going to compare, and I already know back in my question that I need to know how much more time R and S spend than J. So when I compare that, I'm going to be taking away the amount that Miss Jones' class spends. So I've got Miss Rosser's and Miss Smith's, take away Miss Jones' time. So that's my second step. So that's my plan. I've got to combine, and then I've got to compare or take away. So over here, I'm ready for my do. And I'm going to put a split line so I know I have step 1 over here and step 2 over here. Just kind of common sense. Don't have to label. So my plan said I'm going to add Miss Rosser and Miss Smith. Now I got to remember I'm using these new numbers. So I'm going to add Miss Rosser's and I'm going to add Miss Smith's. And I know with my basic facts, yeah, that's going to be about right. So now I've got to take those numbers and take away Miss Jones, because that's my new amount. That's Miss Rosser and Smith combined. So this is going to go over into my second step, and I'm going to take away Miss Jones, which is now that amount. So I want to make sure I have both of those on there. In fact, I'm even going to go back and label this RS and J. Yep, that's making sense because that was my question. Okay, so that gives me 20. So I'm pretty sure this is my answer. I'm going to go ahead and label it, but I got to remember to go to my next step, which is justify, and to check its reasonableness. So let's see. I'm going to justify it by doing a reverse operation, because that to me is going to give me a pretty good idea if I'm close in my math. So I do the do the opposite operation. I'm going to take my 20, and instead of take away 60, I add it. Gives me my 80. Yep, that was what I started with. Now I have to see if this is a reasonable amount. I have to see if I'm even close or in the ballpark. So let's see, we had a class that had about 57 and 31, so that would give me about 80. Yeah, that would give me about 80. So, and then Miss Jones was around 60, so yeah, that definitely makes sense that 20 could be my answer. So I have that written off to the side, just as a part of my reasonableness to make sure it makes sense. And yes, that gives me 20, and that was what I thought I had for my answer. So I'm ready to transfer my answer to whatever answer sheet or bubble or any of those things that I need to do. So I hope this helps you go through it. Now, I know that took a lot of time, but that's explaining every little bit. And as we get better and better at doing all of this, we should spend a lot less time on plug and play and a lot more time on just solving the problem. That's our goal. We want to be able to just solve the problem. We don't need to go through every single step. But until we get it down, yeah, I do want you to use every single step. All right, thanks.